of local government was contentious, but we came to the conclusion that there was no reason for the local governments to be listed in the Constitution, because ordinarily in the federal system, local governments are supposed to be under the purview of the states. And so we said, vacate, remove the local governments from the Constitution, let the states superintend the local governments. If a state likes, if Lagos State wants, it could create 150 local governments, because it's not going to receive additional allocation from anywhere for having so many local governments. And so we decided on that, and so local government was no longer going to be a basis for sharing resources in the country. I spoke earlier about exclusive list that we decided we had to bring it down as much as possible. We also noticed that the concurrent list is also a means through the back door of strengthening the central government. Because you say, for instance, that both the federal government and the subnational units could legislate on, say, higher education. All you need for the central government to take over is for us to make a policy that clashes with that of the federating unit. It goes without saying that in such a situation, the position of the central government supersedes, takes precedence over that of the... What does that mean? It's like adding to your exclusive list through the back door. So we agree that some of these items must be taken away from even that list. The state police, Eddie would update where I think we agree that states that wanted the state police could have them, because there was this passionate argument from those who said, never, we don't want state police because it was misused in the First Republic. And those that said, the type of thing we are witnessing will come. This type of scary security arrangement. Why don't we have the state police so that we'll be able to deal with that? Because a government is not a government if it doesn't have the mechanism for enforcement of its rules or laws or whatever. And so if you say it's a government and there is no enforcement authority, it's not a government in the real sense of the word. We also agree that solid minerals will be taken away from the exclusive list and brought to the concurrent list. Ownership of seaports, railways, and all of that to be on the concurrent list, but with the central government still making the rules for coordination. At the judiciary level, we argued and agreed that a full complement of the judicial system must be replicated, either at the regional level or at the state level. That is, High Court, Appeal Court, and Supreme Court, just as we have in the United States of America. We also agreed that states could create regional commissions that will help them to coordinate. And at the political plane, we arrived at what you call, for want of a better term, the French model. That is a harmonization of presidentialism and parliamentarianism, which again was supposed to be an instrument to deal with issues of instability that are inherent in the Nigerian political system. We couldn't agree on issues of resource control. I recall very well that on some of these dimensions, we were already reaching agreement. For instance, we already had an agreement, an understanding that derivation was going to move from 13% to 18%. We agreed that 5% of allocation from the federal government will go to support areas that were racked by insurgency, or we were going to do that. But there was a counter-argument that if you ask us to put 5% for insurgency, then there will be insurgency in every state, because every state will want to be a partaker. We also agreed that 5% should be set aside to enhance the solid minerals potentials of states. Then the argument was whether the 5% was going to be from the federation account or from the purse of the federal government. By the time all of these issues became too hot, the very smart leadership of the Confab, retired, I think it's late now, Justice Legbo Kutigi, and the diplomat of diplomats, Bolaji Akinyemi, they managed to get the conference to agree that we will remit those issues to the central government and ask the central government to set up a technical team to have a technical approach at that, so that they'll be able to give something that is much more. It was on the basis of that that the Confab wrapped up its proceedings in August 2014. I do not have any doubt in my mind whatsoever, having made the point that the present structure that we have will not allow us to grow, will not throw up great leaders, will continue to divide rather than unite Nigerians. I do not have any doubt in my mind at all that those key items that we canvassed at the Confab that went into the report, including the creation of an additional state for the Southeast, so that the Southeast will have 60 states like all others. It will only be the Southwest alone that already has 7 that will tower above all. And then 18 other states to placate the several minority communities, especially in the northern part of the country. This was the agreement. I don't have any doubt in my mind, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that if we had summoned the courage, the will to implement a good deal of those recommendations, that we wouldn't be in this mess that we are in today. I don't think it takes any professor of political science to tell us we are in a mess today in this country. It doesn't matter where you stand on the podium, left or right, back or forth. You see the realities. We buy now diesel for 800 naira. 800 naira. The naira exchanges for 614 now. So I don't have any doubt in my mind. It will have released the creative energies of Nigerians across the length and breadth of this country. It will have made our governments to begin to work rather than wait every month to go collect allocation from the central government. The industrial relations environment that is making it possible for us to be on strike for 5 months without government paying any attention will have been better handled and better delivered. There will have been greater inclusivity and, of course, by implication, greater stability, because then everybody will have a stake in the survival of the system. This is one reason we now, for instance, canvass that we have proportional representation rather than this first past the post type of system we have that suggests that if you have 51% of the vote, you are the winner. Those who voted, those 49%, those voted no longer matter under the present arrangement. And that's the very recipe for crisis. And so we have had better inclusion, and of course, stability. The anti-restructuring advocacy, they make 3 or 4 points. The first one, they said that the local government autonomy is critical, and we argue, I had presented the argument, it's no longer possible for that. Local governments cannot be autonomous, because then you'll be working against the principle of federalism. Because by ensuring that local governments are autonomous, you are strengthening the central government against the subnational units. And at any event, perhaps a more fundamental argument is that there was no pattern to the creation of the local government. And so you cannot just pretend that it is appropriate for us to accept the way it is when my state and Osun State, same population, 30 local government versus 18 local governments. It doesn't sound reasonable. And so that argument by the anti-restructuring caucus does not hold water. Number 2, they said the sovereignty of the country is represented in the National Assembly, and that there is nothing that we should talk about in terms of restructuring or constitutional engineering that should be outside of the National Assembly. But you know the argument against that? The National Assembly itself is an institution to be restructured, because it was constituted on the basis of these distorted arrangements that just awarded local governments to states. If Lagos and Kano, for instance, are contending over something, and you say, well, let's go vote at the National Assembly, what does that suggest? You suggest that a winner has already emerged, because the same population, you gave 74 local governments to one, you ask another to take 20, and you say they should go and vote. So it doesn't make sense to say that it's only the National Assembly that should be the bedrock of restructuring or finding a new arrangement of governance for this country, because it's National Assembly itself, by the nature of the distortions represented in the way it is constituted, it is a body also that should be itself restructured. Some argue that the Confab was not elected. I have spoken about the nature of the representation. Every identifiable constituency had representation. For instance, those that were supposed to be sent from the states, 5 representatives from each state, 2 of them had to be female gender. There was nothing close to that in the history of Nigeria, in paying attention to the very critical place of women in the scheme of things. From every 5, 2, at least 2 must be female. That was a significant thing. And I argue that at any event, the Constitution, 1999 Constitution that we are defending, was it a people's constitution? Even when it announced that we, the people of Nigeria, gave to ourselves this constitution to be the basis of, we know it is not true. It was a contraption signed into law through a military decree. And so if you said the Confab wasn't elected, wasn't representative enough, it's the constitution that is the basis of what we are running. Was it representative? It wasn't, because it was the general that was handing over, that signed the decree after the election that brought Obasanjo in had been held. As at the time we were holding the election, there was no law that was going to be used to govern Nigeria. It was after the Obasanjo thing had emerged that they signed the constitution into law. This leads me to my final thesis, that the nature of the alternative possibilities Nigeria confronts going forward, in the face of the contradictions of our governance regime, they are such that the present location of the country may very well be the most commodious that it will ever occupy. The situation of things, bad as they may be perhaps the most commodious that we'll ever be in, if we don't do something about the structure of governance of this country. And I have 5 scenarios, which is the basis on which I'm going to conclude. The first is that the country will be lucky to remain the way we are, in this state of paralysis, if we don't do anything about this. The second, it's possible to have ordered pattern of unraveling represented by the former Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia, with different degrees of conviviality or disagreement, as the case may be. You know, 1991-92, the Soviet Union, the superpower, just decided to split into 15 republics, a superpower that had nuclear bombs, nuclear weapons, that have been together for more than 70 years. They broke into 15 republics. 2 of them are at war today, Russia and Ukraine. I hope we won't get to that, because there are some very, very important comments to make on that. There's a third scenario, the possibility of the Malaysia-Singapore experience, or what I call the Gideon-Oka state formation model. This is an arrangement in which a disadvantaged ethno-national community or constituency will want to expel a politically dominant minority that is regarded either as a drag on development, as somebody that is dominating the processes. That was what happened between Malaysia and Singapore in 1965. The Malays felt that where the majority of this, why are the Singaporeans being the ones that are doing well? They want to be dominating, they asked Singapore to go. So they practically expelled Singapore from that country. That was exactly what Gideon Oka and his fellow putschists decided to do in 1972 or 3? 1990, when they carried out a coup, and they thought they had taken control, and they asked some states to get out of Nigeria. That is a possibility, a scenario that you cannot say will never happen if you don't do something. The fourth one is what I call Yugoslavianization, the possible Yugoslavianization of Nigeria. When Yugoslavia existed for several years under the very strong leadership of Josip Broz Tito, the leadership was strong enough to repress very profound differences and different claims, ethno-national claims. But immediately Josip Broz Tito expired. What happened? The country splintered in a very, very acrimonious manner. A war of great damage was done to Europe by reason of that. That is a possibility. The final is what I call, way back in 2007 in a write-up, Somalianization. Somalianization. Under said Barry, General said Barry, we thought Somalia was the only country in the world where the nation was coterminous with the state, where you don't have a distinction between the state and the nation. But after said Barry, the country broke into pieces. They didn't have ethno-national differentiations. They began to talk of clans. And so big guys began to emerge. If you are strong enough to have a few weapons, you can take over a territory and become government. That was what Somalia practically devolved into. I remember on the flight from somewhere to somewhere, and I began to chat this young man who said I was going home. I think we were coming from New York or somewhere. I said, "Where home?" He said, "Somalia." I said, "What? Somalia? You have a place where you put your feet when you land in Somalia?" I said, "Not the Somalia that you talk about. I come from Somaliland." That's the aspect of Somalia that broke away. I think it's northern Somalia. But they're trying to put together some semblance of governance. And so you could still land and go home without anybody chopping off your head. That's the Somalianization. A situation in which everything will just break down completely. That would be the textbook example of state failure that we spoke to earlier on. The concern, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is that it gets to a stage in the life of nations when some epochal acts consequential for national rebirth become too late. It's already very late now for this country. The fear is that as we delay, rather, on the needful and spend useful time on frivolities, you should even listen to arguments going on now about and within this presidential contest. You see a lot of frivolities. I've not seen any presidential person that has come up to articulate a internally consistent vision of how to turn around the Nigerian economy, of how to take out this horrible level of insecurity, of how to build unity back again in Nigeria. We deal in frivolities. As we spend time dealing with frivolities, good reason will lose value. The appeal of extreme ideas would appreciate exponentially. And people who canvass them will seem like messiahs. That is what is called the triumph of extremism. That's where we're getting to. It's getting too late. We're getting to a situation in which our children want to jump through the Mediterranean without regard to the challenges of survival. They do not care. I'm sure you saw what happened in Morocco a few days ago. Scores of Africans tied down as if they were fowls waiting to be celebrated for Christmas. I don't know if our government has issued any statement on that, but you see that, you want to cry, and you wonder, don't leaders see this type of indignities to the children of Africa? Everybody, young men and women with their hands tied behind their back, lying face down. And some rascals were marching over them. Why are kids willing to take those risks? Because we have made Africa unlivable for them. I recall from Libya a few years ago when they brought those who survived the organ harvesting, the palaver back home. One young guy who was interviewed on national television, he said it was bad, it was terrible. I thank God that I survived. But mind you, I'm going back. The journalist said, going back to what you just described, he said it's better to die there to die in this place. When you have a nation getting to that level, when its children are saying, may the country never happen to you, then we must know that we have reached a stage in which we must take some very critical decisions. And that's why it was exciting that APC, because the argument was made in some quarters that the conference was a PDP thing, because it was organized by a PDP president. And now APC set up its own team, led by the governor of Kaduna State, to define for the party what everybody meant by true federalism. By the way, there is no true federalism. Federalism is it's not a destination, it's a journey. You improve as you go on. But significantly, the party came back, and what it reported was exactly what the Confab reported in 2014. The only difference, the Committee for APC recommended that offshore oil resources should lie with the federal government. On all other issues, they were exactly the way they were at the 2014 Confab. And so what are we waiting for? And I argue that it seems to me that the implication of that is that there is what the Americans call bipartisan consensus on what we should be headed, where we should be headed. Two major political tendencies at war with each other, if you will, if you don't mind the way they cross from one to another, within twinkle of an eye. If you say there are different formations, they are in agreement on the direction that we should go. What is our role as scholars, students, and academics? I argue that these things that we're talking about, they are an existential struggle for our nation. A struggle that may lead to its survival or its death, whether we like it or not. I recall a few months ago, even King Gibe, Babagana King Gibe, argued that the idea that Nigeria is indivisible is like what the Americans would call a bunch of malarkey. That doesn't make sense. There is no nation that is too big or too old or too strong to break into pieces. And so it's an existential thing that may inform whether a country, a struggle that will inform whether a country will survive or not. So we cannot afford to just be passive onlookers. We must get involved, and that is what we are doing by this type of engagement. We must keep the conversation going. We must keep the conversation going. After all, as beneficiaries of liberal education, our duty is to think, to write, to speak, and to learn. And so we must do all of this as Nigerians. We must robustly engage the disability narrative. I wrote a piece for Premium Times on the King Gibe thing. Unfortunately, I don't have the date. And I said, well, if this King Gibe thought is the thought of government, then we have gotten out of the woods. If government will now realize that the argument that it's not dissoluble, if they know that it's a fallacy, then those who are saying we don't need to change anything, just let's go on. Because anyway, Nigeria cannot break. It would then mean that they have had a rethink, and we're going to be out of the woods. It was Charles de Gaulle of France, that said that politics and governance were issues that were just too important to be left in the hands of politicians alone. I think that's why we are and must continue to engage. Once again, I thank everybody for listening. I thank the organizers for having me.
Can we do better than that, please? Do much better than that. Wow, wow, wow. This has been wonderful. Only 3 letters can describe this. WOW. 2, 3, go. Thank you. Let's have our seat. Thank you very much. Wow. I started by saying, I like you, sir. But it's unfortunate that I can't continue saying I like you. I'm wowed. Honestly, thank you very much. When you see a man who has drunk from several wells over the years, it's easy to detect. You can't but see results. Thank you for showing us results today. We're inspired. Now we are so much into the program. We have lots of other things to still do today, but the essence of this program will not be achieved if we do not ask for questions. Yes, so at this point in time, please, how many of us were inspired? Thank you. If you were not even inspired, you learned a new word today. You know, we're saying Professor Eragbe was the orator of orators, right? So that view was challenged. I learned one word. Somalianization. Wow. I told you that those of you hungry, before we leave, you will get food. That's one. Somalianization. I'll write it. When I want to speak, I'll just say Somalianization. And people will be wondering where is this coming from. All right, so let's have 3 questions from students and 3 questions from 4 questions from students, 2 from staff, because one of the essence of the program today, or chief among the essence for this program, is the students, or are the students. So let's have 2 male students, 2 female students, a male staff, and a female staff. We'll take, a contribution. Prof, let's give to Prof a contribution. Okay, so let's see your hands. We give you numbers, and then we're done from there. Students, 2 male students, 2 female students. Let's see your hands up. So if we don't have a female, we can take all males. So stand up if you have a question. We are short of time. Be smart about this. Thank you. All right, thank you. Please celebrate these people as they come forward. College of Law. Sorry, that's College of Health Sciences. This is College of Health Sciences. You people are just representing. Please shock them. Any other college? Students? Okay. Joshua? Who else? Okay, I believe that as they ask their questions, others will gain the inspiration. We need just 1 more student. Okay? If you don't have 1 more student, we might give that slot to staff. All right. So, any other student coming? So for the staff, let's see your hands. Oh, many hands. We have an automatic slot because yours is a comment. So we have 2 questions. We have 3. Dr. Jegede, Dr. Kolawole, and Mr. Olakpade. As soon as the students are done, you raised up your hands early on, even before Mr. Olakpade. We'll take all of you, but the condition is 1 minute, and that is it. If you break it, you deny others the opportunity. Students, over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity. So my first question is, you mentioned something about when individuals, or you say groups, have been marginalized, it's very hard to have progress in that society. Well, my observation itself is that if you look at the history of United States of America, we had issues where we have like very massive marginalization of like people of color, or even during like World War, where you had the marginalization of the Asians. But we still saw that America still made progress as a nation. In fact, they became a superpower. So how do you explain that progress of them becoming, still having progress, but with still massive institutionalized racism and stuff like that? Another question says is that there's always what we refer to as Nigerian, kind of like Nigerian dream or Nigerian fallacy, where we feel like we can always make it, or if you're strong enough in Nigeria, you can make it. And why I say this is that I feel like as a country, because of the way states are structured, there's always going to be that state where we're just going to continue to have, like, so we look at countries like states like Lagos, where there's enough progress, where people are just happy enough to let it continue. So how do we change it? Because we know that the federal government itself doesn't, people in power don't want to change it, because they say that we need to change the institution of Nigeria, but people in power don't want to change it. But because of there's always that progress, that slight progress, where people are just happy enough. So how do we change that narrative where we can get people to change how things are? My name is Afola Musa Duluwa.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for teaching us and helping us understand things about the state of things. Now, my question is, when we're trying to set up like a very good governance like structure, is it possible for both parties to be happy, like citizens and the government? Is it possible for us to have a structure where you have the government happy and the citizens and the people happy?
Thank you very much, sir. My name is Ajola Joshua, College of Liberal Studies. So my question is a bit outside of everything you've discussed today. In terms of restructuring, I believe you've touched areas of governance, areas of people, culture. But I want to narrow down my question to economy. What is your view on capitalism and socialism in terms of restructuring? Do you think it has a major role to play? If the country is restructured, do you think it should be basically more capitalist, or we should just do like China and just do socialism? Then the second question is this: how do we bridge the gap between the rich and the poor? Do you think that gap can ever be bridged? Even if it cannot be bridged, how can we at least reduce that in a restructured Nigeria? Thank you, sir.
Okay, our guest speaker, would you love to take the answer before we proceed to lecturers, or we'll take all questions? Okay, let's proceed to lecturers or staff. Please proceed with Mr. Handem, and then
All right, so I want to ask, was it an intentional act by the Britons to truncate this seemingly fragile contraption called Nigeria by empowering one region than the other?
Thank you. Thank you. That was brief. Thank you. Sorry, to your left. Yes.
Okay. My question is, how can we deal with the Nigerianness factor? Because we cannot remove the Nigerian factor in everything that we. How do we change the Nigerian factor in every good progress that, we already know the solutions, but the will to get things done? How do we deal with the Nigerian factor?
I hope that what we define as Nigerian factor is the same. All of us. I hope.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the insightful lecture or insightful presentation. I have some issues. One, you talked about amalgamation and your position as regards that. I would like to ask if you can shed more light, bearing in mind that we disintegrating can lead to another civil war. I think you may need to, tell us more about that. I would also want to say about resources. You talked so much about not allocating resources properly. I want to add to that even the men, the hands that are to handle the resources should be visited or revisited. And then your question, while presenting, you said, what are we waiting for? So I want to add to it, what are we actually waiting for? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Yes, we have 2 more to go. Mr. Olakpade, Dr. Femi Oladele. Hands are multiplying. What do we do? Please, let's go with those who had raised up their hands originally. So we're turning right now. Mr. Olakpade. Yes, Dr. Jegede, after Mr. Olakpade.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the presentation, Prof. My first question has to do with the unity of this nation. There was a time I heard about this interview with Sadano of Sokoto around 50s or 60s. And one Briton was interviewing him about his space in the north. And Sadano said that they reserved that space for a northerner who was still in the school. And the man asked, are you not saying Nigeria is one? And he said, he was just laughing. That was Sadano of Sokoto then. And that gave me insight that, do we really have one Nigeria? That is one. Secondly is that your conclusion said about we need to be involved. I believe that the solution to a problem is to face that problem. Now, if we are to be involved, it's always at the time when election is coming that we are inspired. I know this is what we are going to choose. But how can we be involved? That is one. The next one is that how can we remove religion and ethnicity from the choice of leaders for Nigeria? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Olakpade, you spent 2 minutes. Dr. Jegede.
Thank you very much, sir. This morning I was hearing about Jonathan's inability. He was given an excuse that he couldn't. The reason why he would not be able to, they were unable to institute that the recommendations and everything you went through, you spend lots of Nigerian money on. Some of these excuses, do you think they are tenable? Especially when he said, when some of us believe that because of his own second term, and we had that opportunity for the laudable recommendations which the Confab they gave during that time, and it was not instituted. Do you think such exercise in future will not be in futility again? Are we not going to spend lots and lots of Nigerian money calling people together for confab, and at the end of the day, nothing will be done about it?
Thank you very much for that. So we have the last two hands. Dr. Femi Oladele and this hand here. 3 seconds each. Thank you. After 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3.
I have not even spoken. You have already finished counting. Thank you. Prof, thank you for your lecture. I want to ask, from the First Republic, Second Republic, aborted Third Republic, and the Fourth Republic now, even Nigerian parliamentarians have been complaining about the use of decrees to enact laws that has helped to make Nigeria dysfunctional. Why is it that Nigerian parliament, since the First Republic, or Nigerian parliamentarians, since the First Republic till this Fourth Republic, have not been able to revoke these decrees? Is it that the decrees are more powerful than the laws made by the parliamentarians? What is your view, sir?
That sounds like the House of Assembly already. Thank you very much. Dr. Femi Oladele.
Thank you, sir. I wouldn't like to ask my question without mentioning that Professor Femi Mimiko was the Vice Chancellor when I was serving at AAUA. We used to call it Adekunle Michael Jackson University. Okay, sir, Femi Oladele from accounting. I was wondering if at the Confab there was anything about accountability and transparency and how it would influence the staying together of Nigeria. I believe so much that if leaders are accountable significantly, it would alter animosities among players.
Thank you very much. And then we'll have the last, which is the comments from Professor Onoge. I mentioned Professor Onoge early on. Professor Imasoge, sorry.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a very insightful lecture. To me, I see Nigeria as a ticking bomb. Ticking bomb. Like, we are already a failed state. What is helping us is the capacity and the amount of money and the wealth that is in Nigeria. And you see, we are where we are because of the cowardice of the Southerners that have held powers in the past. Somebody like Obasanjo, he has the opportunity to restructure. Everybody knows that 2 cannot be equal to 1. And this is an instance where even 1 is greater than 2. 19 is greater than the 2 former regions, which are 17. Maybe because of his ambition of third term. Even in yesterday's paper, he was saying that, or today's paper, that war is imminent. Because, see, the insecurity in Nigeria has no part 2. And the problem we always have is that ESCON's privileges are very difficult to give up. People who have the privilege will never restructure. The easiest time for us to have done it is during Obasanjo's time or during Jonathan's time. Obasanjo was so much preoccupied with the third term agenda, and Jonathan was coming back for second term or second time plus. You see, the way forward, as I see it, is that we must restructure. That's the only way forward. From the beginning, the amalgamation was wrong. We are so big even at independence. Nigeria was just too large. I remember when I was abroad, you have Botswana, a country of about 2 million.
Time is ticking.
What?
Nigeria is a ticking bomb.
Yes, yes. No, you see, the population even from the onset was very large, but we could have converted that population to be an advantage. Look at Namibia, look at Botswana, they have a population of less than 3 million, and the GDP they are enjoying. So I think it's selfish to keep us like this.
Thank you.
I think it's very selfish.
Thank you. Please celebrate Prof. Prof has lots of things to say. If you listen to her well, she wanted to say what she has been thinking in 10 years, in 10 seconds. Thank you very much. Prof, you can go ahead, sir. Thank you. Please, students, listen. This is time to have your notes. You had a reaction. He gave a thesis. You gave an anti-thesis. Now, this is the synthesis. So, write. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I really, I'm enthused by the questions and the comments. It's an indication that we actually made an impact in that presentation. I just try to, it's good that the organizers have published the paper and it's been circulated, so I'm sure you read and see some of the arguments that we try to make in there. The first one about the US and progress, and yes, the US is still bogged down by a lot of contradictions. Racism is still well and alive in the United States. But don't forget the history of the US. Much of what you call the wealth of the US was built by slaves they brought from Africa everywhere. So that is a fundamental factor that will explain the differences between a country like the United States and Nigeria. I'm not saying that is all, but that should be something that we must take note immediately as quite significant. How do we change this system? It's possible, and that's why for me I think we should keep at this democracy, even when it is still not democratic enough. Because in the process of doing that, we may just be able to get a leader elected that will recognize these fundamental contradictions. And the fact that we know there's no possibility of moving forward if we continue on this track. Such a leader may just be persuaded that it's about time we did something. Look at de Klerk in South Africa. It's a ready example that I love to cite. It was an icon of the apartheid system. He grew from below to become the state president, but he knew that system had no future. He seized the opportunity of the fact that he had a Mandela, a really responsible, a truly responsible person, that he decided to use. He practically rode on the back of Mandela to wind down apartheid and save South Africa from the waiting conflagration. It's possible to still have a de Klerk of our own someday. Is it possible for both parties to be happy? That's the hope. That's the aspiration. That's the basis for organizing the state in the first instance. As I will move away from the Hobbesian state of nature, where life was supposed to be brutish, short, and nasty. I hope we're not there now. But that's the whole purpose. And we must continue, we must keep at this, hoping that we'll be able to get a situation in which there will be no one left behind. My desire, my idea of a Nigeria that works is a situation in which there is no desperation for anybody to think about what to eat before the end of the day. If we're able to get there, then we'll have, the reality of both parties being happy. Capitalism and socialism. The line separating the two are getting blurred. Even China created a conceptual contradiction. It says socialist market economy. The truth is that from 1979 under Deng Xiaoping, China began on the capitalist mode of production. The truth is that capitalism may be weak in terms of its distributive capabilities, but as a very productive system, you cannot take it away from capitalism. What people like us have recommended is a capitalist developmental state. We use the framework of capitalism to build, but we have a state that is alive to its duty that we are not all equal. We don't all have the same capacities, and so we must produce the public good so that those who ordinarily will not be able to compete will still not be left behind. Capitalist developmental state. So we can bridge the gap between the poor and the rich, either by policy, even now, these ones that they distribute money or whatever, they're supposed to be, there's a generic name for that you can use, conditional cash allocation that you could use to bridge the gap. And of course, social justice is also critical. I believe Britain what the British did was intentional, because they knew that you don't build a federation of that nature where one is more powerful than two combined. Amalgamation. And East Africa is a lesson. East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, they were administered virtually as one entity. But at independence, they said they wanted to go their separate ways, and they did that. In those countries, it would be difficult to say that some of them, if not all of them, are not doing better than Nigeria. Management of resources is key. Good leaders, and that's the point we made. So if we continue with this structure of governance, it's going to be difficult to get the good leaders that we spoke about, to address the issue of accountability. Because I said you'll be so compromised before you get to the presidency of Nigeria, such that you won't have any other choice other than to perhaps forget the vision with which you got into office. I'm not saying that there is no prospect for a better future. I'm just saying how difficult it will continue to be. Getting involved, what I mean is that we must continue to engage the way we are doing to be able to understand the issues. Philosophers say a problem understood is a problem half solved. If we don't understand where we're coming from, we won't be able to situate the direction in which we should go. Why Jonathan did not implement, I wouldn't know. He made a point a few days ago that it was because Tambuwal defected. And I'm not suggesting we should have another conference. I'm saying marry what the APC True Federalism Committee and the 2014 Confab, what reports they have brought about, bring them together. Get a small team to harmonize and bring out the critical issues that we need to deliver Nigeria from this level of morass in which it is existing. Parliamentarians and decrees. I don't know, just look at the place and see if you have the type of leadership that you require for Nigeria to get out of the woods. Even what the parliamentarians allocated to themselves alone in this situation of crisis of livability amongst Nigerians raises a question about how responsible that assembly is. If they go home with the type of thing they say they go home with, in spite of the fact that 94 million Nigerians are living below the poverty line, it says a lot about that assemblage of people. Where I agree that Obasanjo could have done a lot because he was head and shoulders above every Nigerian when he became president. He was a general. When he was a general, the most senior of those who were running the country then was probably a colonel. Then he was the only Nigerian that had the experience of having been head of state before. And I say the moment in political science we call honeymoon moment in the transition process, when a new leadership just gets into office. You could get away with blue murder. If you know what you want to do, you have the right vision. You do such things very quickly before Obasanjo didn't seize the opportunity. The only thing he did that was correct in that regard, in that moment of honeymoon, was to take out of the military those political soldiers that were already well entrenched in the Nigerian military organization. I thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
All right, so there's no doubt that he is indeed a walking encyclopedia. He was able to say in few minutes the answer to all of the questions that were raised a while ago. And I want to really appreciate him. Once again, please, can we celebrate him for such generous and self-sacrificial moments today. Thank you, Prof, once again. And I really want to celebrate our students. It's not conventional for students to tarry this long in atmospheres like this. Please celebrate yourselves. Yeah, that's awesome. Staff, I know it's not conventional for our students. I won't say it is conventional for staff. You also did well. Please, staff, let's celebrate ourselves. Thank you very much. All right, so we are grateful for this. I sense and I got to know that some other persons have other questions. You can have a chat after now with Prof as he goes. Use the opportunity to farm him and all. We're not going to waste further time. I'm going to quickly ask right now that Professor Imasoge, okay, I'm getting it now. Professor Imasoge comes up to give our vote of thanks while we ask Dr. Oji to get ready to say the closing prayer. I'd like to inspire you students who are here today to pick a leaf. Apart from things you've written, he laid emphasis on certain things. One of them is Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Everything he said today revolves around what they wrote. We hardly read those books and those topics anymore. Social contracts. You're in medicine, you're in accounting, you're in anything. Please go back home and read social contracts. You will not be less than him if you read that very well in thinking and in intellect. Thank you very much. Professor Imasoge, please celebrate her as she comes forward. Yes.
Thank you very much. Our erudite professor, it's really a privilege to be here, and we thank you for making time to nurture our students, because everybody knows what is going on in Nigeria. Everybody. That even parents find it difficult to pay fees, even with their best of intentions. Nigeria is not a welfare state. There is no form of welfareism. And even people that are not political, my own discipline is law, so we are very close to political science. And even Bowen is having a new course, law and politics, from next session. So you cannot but get interested in everything that affects you. The lecture today, we are really very, very grateful for your time. And students, we are grateful, like the MC said, that all of you have waited till the end. And my colleagues, we thank you so much. We are grateful, and we wish you Johnny Mercies back, and that when next we call on you, you'll be willing to come. Thank you very much, and God bless.
All right, thank you very much. Now I'm going to ask Professor Aragbe quickly to come as the chairman of the committee, a few words for us. Thank you.
Thank you. The reason I decide to step forward is for us to understand the essence of what has taken place here today. Prof has come to stimulate us in terms of the discourse about our nation. And that is why this committee is dedicated to, as a mock confab, which is to prepare our students in terms of appreciating the problems of nation building in Nigeria. And that is that the ultimate aim is that you live here, you understand the crisis of development we are facing as a nation, politically, economically, socially, and all, so that when you live here, you'll be better equipped with the knowledge of developmental crisis in our country. And if given the opportunity, because remember, there is the recently approved law by way of the Not Too Young to Rule, which is that completing your program here, before you know it, you might be called upon to be in a leadership position in your community, in your state, and indeed the country. As Prof was mentioning just now, at the Confab, all structures, society, different bodies were represented, and symbolically, it was the youngest member of the Confab, who was barely 19 or 20, that was called upon to say the closing prayers, believing that Nigeria will get better. It is, therefore, the plan of this committee in the months ahead that at the college level, the program level, topics will be identified within these issues of Nigerian crisis for students to ventilate and, of course, discuss. And then there will be collegiate competition that is involving the programs, and then there will be the grand finale, which will be the one at the university level, which the coach talked about today, that will be showcased and presented during the convocation in November. And there is already a commitment of the Vice Chancellor to having one of the major networks, either AIT, that is Arise, or channels, and all to come and cover
what will be going on then amongst our students. So it is not, we know the final year students, congratulations as you are getting ready to move. You may not be around when we are doing this, but for those that have been here today, please, as we have said earlier on, the names will be given to you later. Identify any of your lecturers here so that at your college level, we are asking, that is why each of the colleges is represented in the committee. They will be at the ones that we organize at that level, and we move on in terms of getting it at the college and university level. I want to join my colleague, Senior Professor of Law, to thank all of you for this massive, historic participation. I just want to add the response given by the Prof himself concerning why the Confab report was not implemented. One of the challenges we faced at the end of the Confab was that, in quotes, there was misrepresentation as to what we were paid. So all of us then, they thought that this dollarization, it has not occurred at that time, that we were super taken care of. What actually took place, and I explained it on AIT television programs then, was that there was per capita head in terms of that for 490-something delegates. This is what you are going to use to take care of their books, to take care of their accommodation, to take care of their lunch, and all of those things put together. A lot of money was spent on it. But then, the fact is that there were 3 sets of recommendations that came under the 600 Prof has identified. There were those that were to be done by policies. There were those that were to be done by legislation. And there were those that were to be done by constitutional amendment. And for Jonathan, as he stated, if he had continued at that time, it would have been that he was trying to perpetuate himself in office or trying to achieve certain things for himself. And of course, maybe he wasn't a great historian. He would have known that there is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at his actual time will lead on to fortune. And if you miss it, you miss it. So his decision to wait to win second term may be one of the major reasons why it was not implemented. The story is not yet over. Close observers of the Nigerian political development have seen that even as we speak today, most of these issues are still very much alive in terms of the discussions going on in the National Assembly. And as you are aware, amendments have already taken place in the Constitution, and there are new ones that are pending which might address this. But more fundamentally, please, our great students, we hope that today will remain memorable in your hearts, in your career here at Bowen. Go home, discuss Nigeria, work for Nigeria. It is not yet over. It is possible to make Nigeria great again. Thank you very much, and God bless you. So it's on that note, I'm now co-anchoring with my brother, Dr. Akintude, correct? Yes. We are now going to invite very strong, you can see, these are the pride of the Nigerian academia. We are proud of them. If you check, just like the one we brought during the law program, he has been there, Harvard, Wisconsin, Philadelphia, different places. We are not local, we are international. And having listened to him, it is the tradition of our great university that we do presentation to him by way of what we call souvenir to mark his day here. And of course, we will again respectfully invite our professor, former provost, College of Law, to step forward to help us now with the PRO himself, who has been so busy making sure we succeed, do the presentation. And this we will do with this at the background. Please let more people come and snap, even with your free camera, so that pictures can show when it starts streaming in your individual pictures. Where is the main?
In case you misplaced your ID card, please just see me after that. Committee members. Okay, committee members, just before the closing prayer, please rise on your feet wherever you are. Committee members. Student members of the committee, are you here? Please also rise up. Okay. So committee members are going to take a bow right now.
Please, you can take this number down. 0, you have your pens. In case all these things we are saying is not so clear. 080 233 04531. 080-233-04531. That is the chairman's phone number for now. And that happens to be myself. So if you have any doubts or things, you get in touch. We will definitely help you out.
Just before the prayer, if you are Saka Mohammed Jimo, just see me for your ID card after now. Thank you.
Can we pray? Almighty and eternal living God, we thank you for the opportunity of this day. We are grateful for making it possible for us to witness this day and for the success of this event. We thank you and pray that whatever we have learnt in this during the course of this lecture, that it will lead to the betterment of Nigeria and to the betterment of all of us in the mighty name of Jesus. We pray for Johnny Mercies as our guest lecturer will be traveling back, that you, Lord, will also continue to bless and strengthen him in the mighty name of Jesus. For our university also, we thank you, Father, and pray that Bowen University will continue to grow from strength to strength. All this we ask in the mighty name of Jesus.
Let's rise for the anthem, please. Thank you for starting, and whatever is what's starting well is what's ending well. Thank you.